On a frozen night in the Wild West, one man made a single decision that should have cost him his life. He stopped, he turned back, and he saved an Apache woman left to die in the snow. What happened next was not gratitude, it was a tribal law so powerful that it erased his old life forever. Before this story ends, you'll see how mercy became destiny and why walking away was no longer an option. If you love true frontier legends filled with courage, honor, and unexpected fate, subscribe now, share this story, and comment your thoughts. Let's start this unforgettable journey. The storm came down from the mountains without warning, swallowing the desert in white silence. Elijah Carter rode with his head lowered, coat stiff with ice, breath fogging the darkness ahead. The trail had vanished hours ago, erased by wind and snow, but he pressed forward because stopping meant freezing. His horse stumbled, exhausted, and Elijah muttered a prayer he hadn't believed in for years. The frontier had taught him many lessons, but mercy was never one of them. That night he would learn the hardest lesson of all, written not in blood, but in choice. That was when he saw her shape in the snow, half-buried, unmoving. At first, Elijah thought it was a fallen tree or a dead animal, but something about the stillness felt wrong. He dismounted cautiously, boots crunching against ice, hand hovering near his revolver. When he brushed snow from her face, his breath caught. She was young, her skin pale with cold, her lips cracked, eyes closed as if already claimed by death. The markings on her clothing told him immediately, Apache. Helping her could cost him his life. Elijah hesitated, his mind racing through every warning he had ever heard. Apache land meant danger. Apache blood meant revenge. If she had been left here, it was not without reason. The storm howled louder as if urging him to leave. He stood there, torn between fear and conscience, knowing the law of the land favored survival over sympathy. Then her chest moved, barely, but enough. That single breath shattered his doubt. He removed his coat, wrapped her tightly, and lifted her onto his horse. The ride back to his cabin felt endless. The woman's body was light, frighteningly so, and her breathing shallow against his chest. Elijah spoke to her even though she did not answer, telling her to hold on, promising warmth and fire ahead. His cabin finally emerged through the storm like a ghost, a single structure clinging to the hillside. Inside, he built a fire with shaking hands, melted snow, and rubbed warmth back into her limbs until his own fingers burned with pain. Hours passed before her eyes opened. They were dark, sharp, and filled with fear the moment they focused on him. She tried to move, to reach for a weapon that was no longer there. Elijah stepped back slowly, palms open, voice calm but strained. He told her she was safe, that he would not hurt her, that the storm would have killed her. She did not answer, only watched him, memorizing his face as if weighing his soul. Trust, he knew, would not come easily. Days followed in uneasy silence. She recovered slowly, strength returning to her limbs, suspicion never leaving her eyes. She ate only when he stepped away and slept lightly, waking at every sound. Elijah learned her name was Naya, though she offered it without warmth. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were sharp and deliberate. From fragments, Elijah understood she had been cast out by her own people, accused of betrayal she did not commit. The storm was meant to finish what the accusation had started. Elijah felt anger burn in his chest at the injustice, but he kept it to himself. He was an outsider to her world, ignorant of its laws and punishments. He offered supplies when she was strong enough to stand, even a horse to reach a nearby town. Naya refused all of it. Her people needed to know she lived, she said, and more importantly, why. Before Elijah could argue, she gathered herself and disappeared into the hills, leaving silence behind. He believed that was the end of the story. Life on the frontier trained men not to expect closure. Weeks passed, and Elijah returned to his routines, though something inside him had shifted. Then one night, the sound of hooves circled his cabin like a closing trap. He woke instantly, rifle in hand, heart pounding against his ribs. Shadows moved outside, silent and disciplined. When the door opened, Apache warriors filled the room, weapons ready but not raised. Naya stepped forward from among them, stronger now, her posture proud, eyes steady. She spoke rapidly in her language, explaining, gesturing toward Elijah. He stood frozen, knowing his life balanced on words he could not understand. The elder entered last, his presence commanding immediate silence. He studied Elijah for a long moment, eyes ancient and unreadable. Then, in broken English, he spoke of balance, of debt, and of lives bound by mercy. Elijah was not taken as a prisoner. He was blindfolded and guided through the night, every step heavy with uncertainty. When the blindfold was removed, he stood in the heart of the Apache camp, surrounded by firelight and watching eyes. Children stared openly, warriors watched cautiously, women whispered behind hands. He felt exposed, stripped of every identity he had ever known. The council gathered, and Nea spoke again, her voice strong, unwavering. She told them everything: the storm, the choice, the man who could have ridden away but did not. Apache law, Elijah would learn, did not ignore such acts. Saving a life created a bond that demanded recognition. At dawn, the council reached its decision. Elijah would be offered protection, not as a favor, but as law. His life was now tied to theirs. He could walk away, but doing so would break the balance he had created. Standing there, surrounded by a people he once feared, Elijah realized his old life had already ended the night he chose mercy over fear. What waited ahead was unknown, dangerous, and irreversible. But for the first time in years, it felt meaningful. And as the sun rose over the camp, casting long shadows across the land, Elijah Carter stepped forward into a fate he had never intended to claim. Elijah did not answer the council immediately. He stood in the center of the camp, feeling the weight of 100 eyes, understanding that silence itself was a response. The elder waited patiently, knowing that choices made in haste carried weak spirits. When Elijah finally nodded, the decision was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, firm, and irreversible. From that moment, the man he had been on the outside no longer existed in the same way. Life among the Apache did not soften for him. Trust was earned through endurance, not words. Elijah was given work, not comfort. He rose before dawn, learned to ride differently, hunt differently, listen differently. Every movement carried meaning. Every mistake was observed. Some warriors treated him with cold tolerance, others with open doubt. Only a few met his eyes without suspicion. Among them was Nea, who watched him closely, never intervening, never defending him, letting him stand or fall by his own actions. As weeks turned into months, the land began to speak to Elijah in ways it never had before. He learned how the Apache read the wind, how they followed tracks invisible to untrained eyes, how silence could be louder than gunfire. In return, he shared what he knew of rifles, patrol patterns, and the settlers' ways of thinking. Slowly, resistance turned into respect, not because he was different, but because he did not try to be more than he was. Nea and Elijah spoke more often now, usually at night, away from the fires. Their conversations were careful, measured, built on shared experience rather than hope. She told him of the accusation that nearly killed her, how fear within the tribe had demanded a sacrifice. He told her of the wars he had fought for causes he barely understood, of friends buried without names. Between them, something unspoken grew, not rushed, not claimed, but present. Trouble returned with the dust of approaching horses. Scouts brought word of bounty hunters moving through the region, men who followed rumors and money rather than truth. Elijah's name was among those rumors. Someone had spoken of a white man living among the Apache, and that alone was enough to draw guns. The camp prepared quietly. No panic, no shouting, only readiness. When the bounty hunters arrived, they did so arrogantly, demanding Elijah's surrender, accusing him of crimes invented for profit. Elijah stepped forward before the elder could speak. He offered himself, believing the debt had already cost the tribe enough. The elder refused. The Apache formed a line, weapons visible but unmoved. The message was clear: Elijah was not alone. The standoff stretched beneath the burning sun. Words turned sharp. Hands hovered near triggers. One wrong breath could have ended everything. Then Nea stepped forward and spoke, her voice steady, unyielding. She told the bounty hunters that Elijah's life was bound by law older than their contracts, that taking him would mean war. The bounty hunters hesitated, measured risk against reward, and chose survival. They left without another word. That night the elders summoned Elijah. The fire between them crackled softly as the old man spoke of balance restored. The debt was paid. Elijah was free to leave, to return to the world he came from with no mark against him. The choice was his alone now. No law would bind him further. Elijah did not answer immediately. He looked around the camp, at the people who had stood between him and death, at the land that had become familiar, at Nea watching from a distance. He understood then that freedom was not always about leaving. Sometimes it was about staying without obligation. He chose to remain. Seasons passed. Elijah's presence became normal, his role defined not by origin but by action. He became a bridge, warning the tribe of danger, easing tensions with settlers when possible, preventing violence before it could begin. Stories spread quietly, not of a traitor or a captive, but of a man who walked between worlds and belonged fully to neither, yet was trusted by both. Nair and Elijah's bond deepened without ceremony. No promises were spoken, none were needed. Their lives had already been tested by death, by choice, by consequence. They understood each other in ways words could never fully capture. When the elder finally acknowledged their union, it was with a nod, simple and complete. Years later, settlers spoke of the Apache lands with less fear. Raids became rare, bloodshed less common. Some credited changing times. Others whispered of a man who chose mercy when cruelty would have been easier, and how the land itself seemed to answer that choice. Elijah Carter was never seen riding back toward the towns he once knew. His old name faded from records, replaced by stories told around fires, shaped differently by every voice. But one truth remained constant in every telling. On a night when death waited patiently in the snow, one man stopped, lifted a stranger onto his horse, and changed the course of two lives. And in the Old West, where survival ruled all things, that kind of courage was the rarest legacy of all.